G'day, welcome back. Today we're going to be learning how to use a 3-section staff. A 3-section staff is a Chinese weapon, and in this video we're going to be learning how to use it. But I've got no idea where to start. To start with, we're going to be learning this trick. It's just like the nunchuck, spinning in figure 8 and bouncing it off our hips at the same time. But to start with, we're going to learn just the basics. To do the basics, we have to hold 2 pieces of the staff, holding one of them close to our hip while spinning the other one beside us. We have to learn to spin it both ways, stopping it mid-air and then spinning it back the other way. We have to learn to do this on both arms, and doing it on my left hand was a lot harder. You see, these are a lot heavier than the nunchucks. They are way thicker and way longer, and a different type of wood, which created all sorts of challenges. After practicing this one for quite a while, spinning it on both arms in all directions, we could start to move on to the next basic. The next move is the figure 8. Now, just like the nunchucks, we have to spin it on each side of our body, being careful not to hit the stick or myself. Now, this is made of solid wood, so getting hit by one of these wasn't fun, and I got hit a lot. We had to fight through the pain, continuing to practice, and then after not too long, it started to come together and it was time to add in the next move. The next move is bouncing it off our hip. Now, this one's super easy to do with the nunchucks, so I figured it wouldn't be too hard to do with the 3-section staff. It really wasn't too hard to add in, but the fear is what grew. It was so much scarier spinning 2 things at the same time because you just didn't know where you're going to get hit from. And when you did get hit, not only did it hurt, but it also scared me. So before, when I was spinning it, I was just mainly hitting my body, but now because I was spinning 2 things, I'd squish my thumbs in between the staffs. After more practice, I started getting the results I wanted to see. It was time to move on to the next trick, which involves spinning the staff above my head. Now, to start with, we're going to practice with the bow staff, making sure to keep my hands super loose so I can spin the staff in all directions without having to change my hand grips. When I moved over to using the 3-section staff, I was terrified. I kept whacking myself, and I realized the reason I was doing that is because I was spinning it quite slow. The trick to it is you need to spin the staff fast enough to pick up momentum for the sticks to spin. But of course, when you spin it faster and it does hit you, it hurts a lot more. Putting the fear aside, I just had to keep on going. In comparison to the last trick, this one felt like I had way more control when I started to get it. But also, it took me a lot longer to get it. After crushing my hands countless times, it was time to add in the next step. You see, I'm getting the spin above my head well, but I still need to practice when it comes down and hits around my waist. So I picked up the bow staff again, just to show you guys what I mean by hitting my waist. The staff needs to spin around my head and then wrap around my waist, so then it takes out all the energy. Now, unfortunately, I kept crushing my hand, and it turns out it's because you're not supposed to have it hit your waist. It's actually supposed to go in your armpit. Now, this was a lot scarier because I was afraid the staff was going to hit me in the head. And when I started spinning it, it did. But it took all the power out, so it was just like being tapped on the back. It didn't actually hurt that much, it was just scary. After a lot of practicing, it all started to come together, and I was feeling quite confident, and started spinning it faster and faster. So now it's time to move on to our last trick, and this one was the worst. It involves doing a big figure 8 with the entire staff instead of just one end. Now, to start with, we started practicing with just the bow staff again. It's a bit different than the way we spun it with the bow staff in my previous video, and you'll see why later. Now, I start spinning and I kept hitting myself really hard. I was terrified. This one was the scariest one, and I just couldn't get it. I spent the most time on it. I kept whacking myself in the jaw, in the back, in the legs, and I just kept getting hurt. So when I started picking it up to spin it, even though nothing had happened, I was still scared I was going to hit myself, and I kept messing up. And then disaster struck, or should I say, the staff struck, and it struck me really hard. It hurt so much, I had to call it quits for the day. I was up bright and early the next morning to keep on practicing. I was still terrified of hitting myself again, and I kept clashing the staffs together. I picked up the bow staff to practice a little bit more, but it was no help. I just kept hurting myself. And then I had the idea, why don't I spin it with just one hand? Just like the bow staff. Like before, I was spinning it with 2 hands, and I was keeping my hands in the same spot, and that's what made it different than the bow staff. When I started spinning it with one hand, it all came together and I didn't even hit myself once. And last and definitely not least, time to put it all together. I started going through all my moves, trying to leave as little time in between each move as possible, which became a lot harder than I thought. especially going between the last two. Switching from using two hands to one proved to be quite a challenge. After not too long, I had a nice flow between the first two moves, switching from bouncing it off my hip to going above my head. The real trouble was going from above my head into one hand. I just couldn't get the right timing. I just had to keep on practicing. Although I messed up here and there, I kept on going, and eventually it started coming together. After a long time of practice, I tried doing the two hands and it stopped, because I thought I was going to hit myself. But I tried to save it with doing it over my head and it kind of worked. After a long time of practicing, it all came together and I was very happy with my results. This weapon was by far one of my favorites and also one of the scariest to use. I would not recommend trying to learn this one. It is terrifying, but if you do, grab a foam one, as using a wooden one will just leave you battered and bruised. Now if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. I'm trying to reach 500 subscribers by the end of the year, and I can't do it without you. And I'll see you in the next video.